I demand a trial by combat.
This is Let's Get Litty Read Along, GOT edition. Escape into the land of Westeros each week as we travel through the Seven Kingdoms. Which house will prevail and rule the Iron Throne, or gain its independence? Is a bigger evil really lurking beyond the wall? With decade-long summers and even longer winters, grab your favorite drink, sit back, and relax because reading is coming. Hey guys, welcome back. We're back. It is end of dance season, soccer season, spring play. Summer plays around the corner, but we've got a little gap. Also got a concussion. That was really fun, just right off the door. If I get too close, I'm just so bright. Just a ghosty ghost. It looks like I have a little filter on, and I don't. It's just a really bad light, really up close, you know. Apparently, accents are happening in our welcome back episode. Happy to be back, everyone. We're gonna be on regular schedules from here on out. I promise. We're gonna get through this fucking book and on to the next. So stay tuned for some long ass episodes. We're still gonna do some Litty episodes. Recorded a couple extra lit ones, and they were so lit we didn't actually get any reading done. So there's that. And I don't want to like kill my liver completely, but we're gonna have some really lit episodes. My God, you guys, I'm just into these classes. Like right here, perfection lighting. 1 inch forward, too bright. Maybe one day we'll upgrade. We're just drinking tea tonight. It's a weeknight recording this. I'm gonna get up early tomorrow. But we will be back to lit soon. And we can have fun without alcohol, right? Most of the time. Honestly, I don't even remember. I hate that. I hate the bubble so fucking much. Like the lasers, watch this. This one's cool as shit. If I can get it to work. It's making me look like a liar. It has worked before. Come on, Zoom. Ah, well, whatever. One time I did this. Lasers everywhere. Sometimes you do this, or you just hold a cup and the thumb pops up. And it's really annoying. And I don't like I don't like it. Don't like it. What else is new since we last chatted? I missed you guys. I missed my besties. Basically having minty breaks all the time because I haven't been able to talk to everybody. And this is our social therapy hour. So like, what the fuck? It's also can't see it very well because it's so bright. It's bright girl summer. So we had some hot pink nails. We got yellow this time because they were out, and I think we'll go back to hot pink next time. I'm not a whole lot is new. I still work. I still hurt myself. I'm quite frankly pretty bored with dance being done for the season. Um, got some new clothes and some new shoes. Watch some movies. If you haven't seen The Challengers, when it comes out to stream that shit. Chef's kiss. So good. So good. Um, it's almost Leo season, so that's exciting. We're gearing up for that. Because I'm gonna be unbearable, maybe a lot when it's Leo season. Because as you know, your girl's turning 30, so it's prime Leo season. 30, flirty, and thriving. Let's fucking go. Just keep getting distracted by this glow. Anyway, what else? Should we just read? Should we just really get into it? Just pick up that book and read the words over and over and over again. Here we go. Also have to get it where I can actually see the words, so just do a slight adjustment. So, 1, 2, 3, baby, let's go. Should we just jump right in with the accents? The courtyard rang to the song of the swords. Under black wool, boiled leather, and mail. Sweet, no. One thing has not changed. Your girl can still not fucking read words out loud. Sweat trickled icily down John's chest as he pressed the attack. Grin stumbled backward, defending himself clumsily. When he raised the sword, John went underneath and with a sweeping blow that crunched against the back of the other boy's leg and sent him staggering. Grin's downcut was answered by an overhand that dented his helm. When he tried a side swing, Okay, no accent because I can't read tonight. John swept aside his blade and slammed a mailed forearm into his chest. Grin lost his footing and sat down hard in the snow. John knocked his sword from his fingers with a slash to his wrist. That brought out a cry of pain. Enough! Sir Alistair Thorne had a voice with an edge like Valyrian steel. Grin cradled his hand. The bastard broke my wrist. The bastard hamstrung you. You opened your empty skull and cut off your hand, or would have, if these blades had an edge. It's fortunate for you that the watch needs stable boys as well as rangers. Sir Alistair gestured at Jaren and Toad. Get the aurochs on his feet. He has funeral arrangements to make. John took off his helm as the other boys were pulling Grin to his feet. The frosty morning air felt good on his face. He leaned on his sword, drew a deep breath, and allowed himself a moment to savor the victory. That is a long sword, not an old man's cane, Sir Alistair said sharply. Are your legs hurting, Lord Snow? John hated that name, a mockery that Sir Alistair had hung on him the first day he came to practice. The boys had picked it up, and now he heard it everywhere. He slid the longsword back into its scabbard. No, he replied. Thorne strode toward him, crisp black leathers, whispering faintly as he moved. He was a compact man of 50 years, spare and hard, with gray in his black hair and eyes like chips of the onyx. Onyx? Onyx? The truth now, he commanded. I'm tired, John admitted. His arm burned from the weight of the longsword, and he was starting to feel his bruises now that the fight was done. What you are is weak. I won. No, the Aurochs lost. One of the other boys sniggered. Don't like that word. John knew better than to reply. He had been beat, he had beat, God. He had beaten everyone that Sir Alistair had sent against him, yet it gained him nothing. The master at arms served up only desertion. Thorn hated him. John had decided. Of course, he hated all the other boys even worse. That will be all, Thorn told them. I can only stomach so much ineptitude in any one day. If the others ever come for us, I pray they have the archers, because you lot are fit for nothing more than arrow fodder. John followed the rest back to the armory, walking alone. He often walked alone here. There were almost 20 in the group he trained with, yet not one could call a friend. Most were 2 or 3 years older, 3 years his seniors, yet not one was half the fighter Rob had been at 14. Darian was quick but afraid of being hit. Pip used his sword like a dagger. Jaren was weak as a girl, Grin slow and clumsy. Halder's blows were brutally hard, but he ran right into your attacks. The more time he spent with them, the more John despised them. Inside, John hung. Inside, John. Oh my. Inside, John hung sword and scabbard from a hook in the stone wall, ignoring the others around him. Methodically, he began to strip off his mail, leather, and sweat-soaked woolens. Chunks of coal burned in the iron braziers at either end of the long room. But John found himself shivering. The chill was always with him here. In a few years, he would forget what it felt like to be warm. The weariness came on him suddenly, and he donned the rough span blacks that were their everyday wear. He sat on a bench, his fingers fumbling with the fastenings on his cloak. So cold, he thought, remembering the warm halls of Winterfell, where the hot waters ran through the walls like blood through a man's body. There was a scant warmth to be found in Castle Black. The walls were cold here, and the people colder. No one had told him the Night's Watch would be like this. No one except Tyrion Lannister. The dwarf had given him the truth on the road north, but by then it had been too late. John wondered if his father had known what the wall would be like. He must have, he thought. That only made it hurt worse. Even his uncle had abandoned him in this cold place at the end of the world. Up here, the genial Benjen Stark he had known became a different person. He was first ranger, and he spent his days and nights with Lord Commander Mormont and Maester Aemon and the other high officers, while John was given over to less than the tender charge of Sir Alistair Thorne. 3 days after their arrival, John had heard that Benjen Stark was to lead a half-dozen men on a ranging into the haunted forest. That night, he sought out his uncle in the great timbered common hall and pleaded to go with him. Benjen refused him curtly. This is not Winterfell, he told him as he cut his meat with a fork and dagger. On the wall, a man gets only what he earns. You're no ranger, John, only a green boy with the smell of summer still on you. Stupidly, John argued. I'll be 15 on my name day, he said. Almost a grown man. A man grown. Benjamin Stark frowned. A boy you are, and a boy you'll remain until Sir Alistair says you are fit to be a man of the Night's Watch. If you thought your Stark blood would win you easy favors, you were wrong. We put aside our families when we swear our vows. Your father will always have a place in my heart, but these are my brothers now. He gestured with his dagger at the men around them, all the hard, cold men in black. Whoa. John rose at dawn the next day to watch his uncle leave. One of his rangers, a big, ugly man, sang a bawdy song as he swaddled his garment, his breath steaming in the cold morning air. Benjamin Stark smiled at that, but he had no smile for his nephew. How often must I tell you no, John? We'll speak when I return. So cold. It's freezing in this room. And the AC doesn't even work up here, so it's not from air conditioning. As he watched his uncle lead his horse into the tunnel, John had remembered the things that Tyrion Lannister told him on the King's Road, and in his mind's eye he saw Ben Stark lying dead, his blood red on the snow. The thought made him sick. What was he becoming? Afterward, he sought out ghosts in the loneliness of his cell and buried his face in the thick white fur. If he must be alone, he would make solitude his armor. Castle Black had no godswood, only a small sept and a drunken septon, but John could not find it in him to pray to any gods, old or new. If they were real, he thought, they were as cruel and implacable as winter. He missed his true brothers, little Rickon, bright eyes shining as he begged for a sweet, Rob, his rival and best friend and constant companion, Bran, stubborn and curious, always wanting to follow and join in whenever John and Rob were doing. He missed the girls too, even Sansa, who never called him anything but my half-brother. Since she was old enough to understand what bastard meant, and Arya, he missed her even more than Rob, skinny little thing that she was, all scraped knees and tangled hair and torn clothes, so fierce and willful. Arya never seemed to fit, no more than he had, yet she could always make John smile. He would give anything to be with her now, to muss up her hair once more and watch her make a face, to hear her finish a sentence with him. You broke my wrist, bastard boy. John lifted his eyes at a sullen voice. Grin loomed over him, thick of neck and red of face, with three of his friends behind him. He knew Totter, a short, ugly boy with an unpleasant voice. The recruits all called him Toad. The other two were the ones Yoren had brought north with them. John remembered. Rapers taken down the fingers. In the fingers. He'd forgotten their names. He hardly ever spoke to them if he could help it. They were brutes and bullies without a thimble of honor between them. John stood up. I'll break the other one for you if you ask nicely. Grin was 16 and had a head taller than John. All four of them were bigger than he was, but they did not scare him. He'd beaten every one of them in the yard. Maybe we'll break you, one of the reapers said. Try. John reached back for his sword, but one of them grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back. You make us look bad, complained Toad. You looked bad before I ever met you, John told him. The boy who had his arm jerked upward on him hard. Pain lanced through him, but John would not cry out. Toad stepped close. The little lordling has a mouth on him, he said. He had pig eyes, small and shiny. Is that your mommy's mouth, bastard? What was she? Some whore? Tell us her name. Maybe I had her a time or two, he laughed. John twisted like an eel and slammed a heel down across the instep of the boy holding him. There was a sudden cry of pain, and he was free. He flew at Toad, knocked him backward over a bench, and landed on his chest with both hands on his throat, slamming his head against the packed earth. The two from the fingers pulled him off, throwing him roughly to the ground. Gren began to kick at him. John was rolling away from the blows when a booming voice cut through the gloom of the armory. Stop this now! John pulled himself up to his feet. Donald Noy stood glowering at them. The yard is for fighting, the armorer said. Keep your quarrels out of my armory, or I'll make them my quarrels. You won't like it. Toad sat on the floor, gingerly feeling the back of his head. His fingers came away bloody. He tried to kill me. It's true, I saw it, one of the rapers put in. He broke my wrist, Grin said again, holding it out to Noy for inspection. The armorer gave the offered wrist of the briefest glances. A bruise, perhaps a sprain. Maester Aemon give you a salve. Salve? Salve? Oh. Go with him, Totter. That head wants looking after. The rest of you return to your cells. Not you, Snow. You stay. John sat heavily on the long wooden bench as the others left, oblivious to the looks they gave him, the silent promises of future retribution. His arm was throbbing. The watch has need of every man it can get, Donal said when they were alone. Even men like Toad, you won't win any honors killing him. John's angered flan. He said my mother was a whore. I heard him. What of it? Oh, wait. Cut that out. John's anger flared. He said my mother was a whore. I heard him. What of it? Lord Eddard Stark was not a man to sleep with whores, John said icily. His honor did not prevent him from fathering a bastard, did it? John was cold with rage. Can I go? You go when I tell you to go. John stared sullenly at the smoke rising from the brazier until Noy took him under the chin, thick fingers twisting around his head. Look at me when I'm talking to you, boy. John looked. The armorer had a chest like a keg of ale and a gut to match. His nose was flat and broad, and he always seemed in need of a shave. The left sleeve of his black wool tunic was fastened at the shoulder with a silver pen in the shape of a long sword. Words won't make your mother a whore. She was what she was, and nothing Toad says can change that. You know, we have men on the wall whose mothers were whores. Not my mother, John thought stubbornly. He knew nothing of his mother. Eddard Stark would not talk of her, yet he dreamed of her at times. So often he could almost see her face. In his dreams she was beautiful and high-born, and her eyes were kind. Pause. That's foreshadowing if I've ever fucking read foreshadowing. Unpause. You think you had it hard being a High Lord's bastard? The armorer went on. The boy Jaren is a Septon's git, and Cotter's Pike is the base-born son of a tavern wench. Now he commands East Watch by the Sea. I don't care, John said. I don't care about them, and I don't care about you, or the Thorn, or Benjamin Stark, or any of it. I hate it here. It's cold. Yes, cold and hard and mean. That's the wall. That's the men who walk it. Not like the stories your wetness told you. Well, piss on the stories and piss on your wetness. This is the way it is, and you're here for life, same as the rest of us. Life, John repeated bitterly. The armor could talk. Had one. He had only taken the black after he lost an arm at the siege of the Storm's End. Before that, he'd smite for Stannis Baratheon, the king's brother. He had seen the Seven Kingdoms from one end to the other. He'd feasted and winched and fought in 100 battles. They said it was Donal Noy who'd forged King Robert's warhammer and the one that crushed the life from Rhaegar Targaryen on the Trident. He'd done all of the things that Jon would never do. And then when he was old, well past 30, he'd taken a glancing blow from an axe at the wound and had festered until the whole arm had come off. Only then, crippled, had Donal Noy come to the wall when his life was all but over. Yes, life, Noy said. A long life or a short one, it's up to you, Snow. The road you're walking, one of your brothers will slit your throat for one night. For you one night. They're not my brothers, John snapped. They hate me because I'm better than they are. No. They hate you because you act like you're better than they are. They look at you and see a castle-bred bastard who thinks he's a lordling. The armorer leaned close. You're no lordling. Remember that. You're a Snow, not a Stark. You're a bastard and a bully. Don't talk about Johnny Boy like that. Rude. A bully? John almost choked on the word. The accusation was so unjust it took his breath away. They were the ones who came after me. 4 of them. 4 that you humiliated in the yard. 4 who are probably afraid of you. I've watched you fight. It's not training with you. Put a good edge on your sword and they'd be dead meat. You know it. I know it. They know it. You leave them nothing. You shamed them. Does that make you proud? John hesitated. He did feel proud when he won. Why wouldn't he? But the armorer was taking that away too, making it sound as if he were doing something wrong. They're all older than me, he said defensively. Older and bigger and stronger. That's the truth. I'll wager your master at arms taught you how to fight bigger men at Winterfell, though. Who was he? Some old knight? Sir Roderick Cassel, John said wearily. There was a trap here. He felt it closing around him. Donal Noy leaned forward into John's face. Now think on this, boy. None of these others have ever had a maester at arms until Sir Alistair. Their fathers were farmers and wagon men and poachers, smiths and miners and oars on a trading galley. What they know of fighting, they learned between decks in the alleys of Oldtown and Landsport, and wayside brothels and taverns on the King's Road. They may have clacked a few sticks together before they came here, but I promise you, not 1 in 20 was ever rich enough to own a real sword. His look was grim. So how do you like the taste of your victories now, Lord Snow? Don't call me that, John said sharply, but the force had gone out of his anger. Suddenly, he felt ashamed and guilty. I didn't think. Best you start thinking, Noy warned him. That or sleep with a dagger by your bed. Now go. By the time John left the armory, it was almost midday. The sun had broken through the clouds. He turned his back on it and lifted his eyes to the wall, blazing blue and crystalline in the sunlight. Even after all these weeks, the sight of it still gave him the shivers. Centuries of windblown dirt had pocked and scored it, covering it like a film, and it often seemed a pale gray, the color of overcast sky. But when the sun caught it fair on a bright day, it shone, alive with light, a colossal blue white cliff that filled up the half sky. The largest structure ever built by the hands of man, Benjamin Stark had told John on the King's Road when they had first caught sight of the wall in the distance. And beyond a doubt, the most useless, Tyrion Lannister had aided with a grin, but even the imp grew silent as they rode closer. You could see it for miles off, a pale blue line across the northern horizon stretching away to the east and west and vanishing in the far distance, immense and unbroken. This is the end of the world, it seemed to say. When they finally spied Castle Black, its timbered keeps and stone towers looked like nothing more than a handful of toy blocks scattered on the snow, beneath the vast wall of ice. The ancient stronghold of the Black Brothers was no Winterfell, no true castle at all. Lacking walls, it could not be defended, not from the south or east or west, but it was only the north that concerned the Night's Watch, and the north loomed the wall. Almost 700 feet high it stood, 3 times the height of the tallest tower in the stronghold it sheltered. His uncle said the top was wide enough for a dozen armored knights to ride abreast. The gaunt outlines of the huge catapults and monstrous wooden cranes stood sentry up there, like the skeletons of great birds, and among them they walked men in black as the small ants. As he stood outside the armory looking up, John felt almost as overwhelmed as he had the day on the King's Road. When he had seen it for the first time, the wall was like that. Sometimes he could almost forget that it was there, the way you forgot about the king's sky, about the sky or the earth underfoot. But there were other times when it seemed as if there were nothing else in the world. It was older than the Seven Kingdoms, and when he stood beneath it and looked up, it made John dizzy. He could feel the great weight of all that ice pressing down on him, as if it were about to topple. And somehow John knew that if it fell, the world fell with it. Makes you wonder what lies beyond, a familiar voice said. John looked around. Lannister, I thought I was alone. Tyrion Lannister was bundled in fur so thickly he looked like a very small bear. There's much to be said for taking people unawares? You never know what you might learn. You won't learn anything from me, John told him. He had seen little of the dwarf since their journey ended. As the Queen's own brother, Tyrion Lannister had been an honored guest of the Night's Watch. The Lord Commander had given him rooms in the King's Tower, so called, though no king had visited for 100 years. And Lannister dined at Mormont's own table and spent his days riding the wall, and the nights dicing and drinking with Sir Alistair and Bowen Marsh and the other high officers. I learn things everywhere I go. The little man gestured up at the wall with a gnarled black walking stick. As I was saying, why is it that when one man builds a wall, the next man immediately needs to know what's on the other side? He cocked his head and looked at John with a curious, mismatched eyes. You do want to know what's on the other side, don't you? It's nothing special, John said. He wanted to ride with Benjamin Stark on the rangings deep into the mysteries of the haunted forest, wanted to fight Mance Raider's wildlings and ward the realm against the others, but it was better to not speak of the things you wanted. The rangers say it's just woods and mountains and frozen lakes with lots of snow and ice. And the Grumpkins and the Snarks, Tyrion said, let us not forget them, Lord Snow, or what else? What's the big thing for? Don't call me Lord Snow. The dwarf lifted an eyebrow. Would you rather be called the Imp? Let them see that their words can cut you and you'll never be free of the mockery. If they want to give you a name, take it, make it your own. Then they can't hurt you with it anymore. He gestured with his stick. Come walk with me. They'll be serving some vile stew in the common hall by now, and I could do with a bowl of something hot. John was hungry too, so he fell in bed beside Lannister and slowed his pace to match the dwarf's awkward waddling steps. The wind was rising, and they could hear the old wooden buildings creaking around them, and in the distance, a heavy shutter banging over and over forgotten. Once there was a muffled thump as a blanket of snow slid from a roof and landed near them. I don't see your wolf, Lannister said as they walked. I chain him up in the old stables when we're training. They board all the horses in the east stables now, so no one bothers him. The rest of the time he stays with me, my sleeping cell in Hardin's tower. That's the one with your broken battlement, no? Shattered stone in the yard below and a lean to it like our noble King Robert after a long night's drinking. I thought all those buildings had been abandoned. John shrugged. No one cares where you sleep. Most of the old keeps are empty and you can pick any cell you want. Once Castle Black had 5,000 fighting men with all their horses and servants and weapons. Now it was home to a tenth that number, and parts of it were falling to ruin. Tyrion Lannister's laughter steamed in the cold air. I'll be sure to tell your father to arrest more stonemasons before the tower collapses. John could taste the mockery there, but there was no denying the truth. The Watch had built 19 great strongholds along the wall, but only 3 were still occupied. Eastwatch on its gray, wind-swept shore, the shadow towered hard by the mountains where the wall ended, and Castle Black between them, at the end of the King's Road. The other keeps, long deserted, were lonely, haunted places, where the cold winds whistled through black windows and the spirits of the dead man, the parapets. It's better that I'm by myself, John said stubbornly. The rest of them are scared of ghosts. Wise boy, Lannister said. Then he changed the subject. The talk is, your uncle is too long away. Hey guys, we have a quick outfit change because your girl was tired the other day. So we're going to finish John's chapter now. And we're just going to do the one because my computer's going to die. But next episode, probably going to do like at least 2 chapters, maybe more. So stay tuned and let's get back in it. John remembered the wish he'd wished in his anger, the vision of Benjamin Stark dead in the snow, and he looked away quickly. The dwarf had a way of sensing things, and John did not want him to see the guilt in his eyes. He said he'd be back by my name day, he admitted. His name day had come and gone, unremarked, a fortnight past. They were looking for Sir Waymar Royce, his father as bannerman to Lord Arryn. Uncle Benjamin said they might search as far as the Shadow Tower. That's all the way up in the mountains. I hear that a good many rangers have vanished of late, Lannister said as they mounted the steps to the common hall. He grinned and pulled open the door. Perhaps the Grumpkins are hungry in this year. Inside, the hall was immense and draughty, even with the fire roaring in its great hearth. Crows nested in the timbers of its lofty ceiling. John heard their cries overhead as he accepted a bowl of stew and a heel of black bread from the day's cooks. Grin and Toad and some of the others were seated at the bench nearest the warmth, laughing and cursing each other in their rough voices. John eyed them thoughtfully for a moment. Then he chose a spot at the far end of the hall, Well, away from the other diners. Tyrion Lannister sat across from him, sniffing at the stew suspiciously. Barley, onion, carrot, he muttered. Someone should tell the cooks that turnip isn't a meat. It's mutton stew. John pulled off his gloves and warmed his hands in the steam rising from the bowl. The smell made his mouth water. Snow. John knew Alistair Thorne's voice, but there was a curious note in it that he had not heard before. He turned. The Lord Commander wants to see you now. For a moment, John was too frightened to move. Why would the Lord Commander want to see him? They had heard something about Benjen, he thought wildly. He was dead. The vision had come true. Is it my uncle? He blurted. Is he returned safe? The Lord Commander is not accustomed to waiting, was Sir Alistair's reply, and I'm not accustomed to having my commands questioned by bastards. Tyrion Lannister swung off the bench and rose. Stop it, Thorne. You're frightening the boy. Keep out of matters that don't concern you, Lannister. You have no place here. I have a place at court, though, the dwarf said, smiling. A word in the right ear, and you'll die a sour old man before you get another boy to train. Now, tell Snow why the old bear needs to see him. Is there news of his uncle? No, Sir Alistair said. This is another matter entirely. A bird arrived this morning from Winterfell with a message that concerns his brother. He corrected himself. His half-brother. Bran, John breathed, scrambling to his feet. Something's happened to Bran. Tyrion Lannister laid a hand on his arm. John, he said, I am truly sorry. John scarcely heard him. He brushed off Tyrion's hand and strode across the hall. He was running by the time he hit the doors. He raced to the commander's keep, dashing through the drifts of old snow. When the guards passed him, he took the tower steps 2 at a time. By the time he burst into the presence of the Lord Commander, his boots were soaked and John was wild-eyed and panting. Bran, he said, what does it say about Bran? Jer Mormont, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, was a gruff old man with an immense bald head and a shaggy gray beard. He had a raven on his arm and he was feeding it kernels of corn. I am told you can read. He shook the raven off and it flapped its wings and flew the window where it was sat watching more as Mormont drew a roll of paper from his belt and handed it to John. Corn, it muttered in a raucous voice. Corn, corn. John's finger traced the outline of the dire wolf in his white wax of the broken seal. He recognized Rob's hand, but the letters seemed to blur and run as he tried to read them. He realized he was crying, and then, through the tears, he found the sense in the words and raised his head. He woke up, he said. The gods gave him back. Crippled, Mormont said. I'm sorry, boy. Read the rest of the letter. He looked at the words, but they didn't matter. Nothing mattered. Bran was going to live. My brother is going to live, he told Mormont. The Lord Commander shook his head, gathered up a fistful of corn, and whistled. The raven flew over to his shoulder, crying, Live, live. John ran down the stairs, a smile on his face and Rob's letter in his hand. My brother is going to live, he told the guards. They exchanged a look. He ran back to the common hall, where he found Tyrion Lannister just finishing his meal. He grabbed the little man under the arms, hoisted him up in the air, and spun around in a circle. Bran is going to live, he whooped. Lannister looked startled. John put him down and thrust the paper into his hands. Here, read it, he said. Others were gathering around and looking at him curiously. John noticed Grin a few feet away. A thick woolen bandage was wrapped around one hand. He looked anxious and uncomfortable, not menacing at all. John went to him. Grin edged backward and put his hands. Stay away from me now, you bastard. John smiled at him. I'm sorry about your wrist. Rob used the same move on me once, only with a wooden blade. It hurt like 7 hells, but yours must be worse. Look, if you want, I can show you how to defend that. Alistair Thorne overheard him. Lord Snow wants to take my place now, he sneered. I'd have an easier time teaching a wolf to juggle than you will training the Aurochs. I'll take that wager, Sir Alistair, John said. I'd love to see ghosts juggle. John heard Grin suck in his breath, shocked. Silence fell. Then Tyrion Lannister scoffed. Three of the Black brothers joined in from a nearby table. The laughter spread up and down the benches. Fuck. Then Tyrion Lannister coughed. Three of the Black brothers joined in from a nearby table. The laughter spread up and down the benches until even the cooks joined in. The birds stirred in the rafters, and finally even Gren began to chuckle. Sir Alistair never took his eyes from Jon. As the laughter rolled around him, his face darkened and his sword hand curled into a fist. "That was a grievous error, Lord Snow," he said at last, in the acid tones of an enemy. All right, litigators, that's it for this episode. We will be back next week, coming in hot and fierce. So thanks for listening. As always, like, subscribe, follow, and share away. Mwah.